Fáilte. Welcome to the video, The Mórrígan, an introduction and Irish language pronunciation. And this is one that I've been asked for quite a lot, and also one that, looking around at the general standard of Morrigan videos on YouTube, might be welcome, shall we say. Maybe. I don't know. You decide. So there is a lot of false information out there about the Mórrigan. And what I would like to do, obviously there's a huge amount that we could be talking about, and there's a huge amount that I do talk about and teach about, and all of that. You'll get resources and everything at the end of this video. But just really wanted to bring it back to basics, like very, very basics. And the two things were just some basic facts and the Irish language pronunciation. So let's have a look. So first off, who am I? Hey, I am Lora O'Brien, and I am an Irish pagan generally, born here and grew up here and still live here and all of that. And there's a lot of things that I could be called and a lot of things I am called, I'm sure, but we don't have to go into that. But what's in a title? The only title that I'm really comfortable giving you or going by in any way, shape or form would be Drí, which is very basically a practitioner of Indigenous Irish magic and spirituality, and or native magic, and or whatever. We don't really have priesthood titles as such. We don't have Druid has been kind of taken over. So let's just stick with Drí. Okay, so that's who I am. And there's a lot more to that, obviously, but sure, we don't need to go into that right now. So besides me, who is the Mórrígan? We are looking at an Irish deity, and specifically Irish, not Celtic. I know that Celtic is a general catch-all term that is used, and people generally will kind of lump Irish and Scottish and various other Celtic nations together. And really that is a language division or a language commonality. So it's an academic descriptor. Celtic is an academic descriptor that covers language and basic culture similarities, historically speaking. But the Mórrigan is specifically an Irish deity. So let's stick with that. Ooh. And she generally appears as female, and that goes for human forms and also animal forms that she would appear in. She generally is female specifically. She appears in various story cycles, certainly the mythological cycle with Cat Má Tíre, the Ulster cycle in the Táin and various other stories, Raibh and the cycle of kings, to a certain extent maybe as Abel. That one's debatable, but I reckon she shows up in most of the cycles, if not all of them, in various forms and functions. So she really does kind of carry through our myths and legends and lore. Mórrigan is used variously through the texts as a name, a title, and a noun. We're not 100% sure exactly what the origin of it is, but we do have the usage that has remained with us. So Mórrigan is Great Queen, and Morin is Phantom Queen. And those are the meanings, the translations, if you like, of Mórrigan. She is a goddess of prophecy. She is a goddess of battle and war. And that for me is very much tied in with prophecy. And there's a whole lot to that. It's tied in with also her sovereignty aspects. And none of these things kind of stand alone. They're all very, very much interlinked. the prophecy with the battle, with the sovereignty. You will hear a lot of people talk about the Mórrigan as a sex goddess. There is a story where she does have sex with her husband, the Dagda. That does not make her a sex goddess. Sorry, boys. But you can take your Mórrigan fantasies elsewhere, okay? And girls also. Take your Mórrigan fantasies elsewhere. That does not make her a sex goddess just because she has sex. Newsflash, that is it is a function that female presenting people sometimes do. So, like I said, generally, goddess of prophecy, battle, war, sovereignty, and very, very much connected to the other world and the community to a certain extent, and taking care of the community. And that's maybe where her sovereignty function comes in. But again, there's a lot more to that. So let's move on. Oh, did not mean to be ate by the crow there. So her names, this is where we get into the pronunciation bits. And of course, the very, 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 very brief intro that I just gave you is more to correct some of the misinformation that's out there and maybe introduce some correct information, and is very much my scholarship, my research from the resources, my personal gnosis to a certain extent, but also just for a little bit of my background, I did work as a guardian and professionally as a manager of the heritage site, the main heritage site that is connected to her, which is Rathcroghan in County Roscommon. And I have been working as a guardian, a guide, and a manager of her sacred sites for pushing 15 years now. So it is not just my personal gnosis, it's also the collected gnosis and, let's call it, anecdata of all of those years of people coming on pilgrimage to her sacred sites, sharing their experiences, having experiences under my guidance, and collating that data and that information. So when I talk about, these are my ideas on the Mórrigan, that's where I'm coming from. And also then personally having been a priest of the Mórrigan for all of those years as well myself, and having done the active work, both on the research and on the lived experience, walking the walk as they speak. So, as they speak, what even is that? Anyway, her names. So there is just before we get into the pronunciation, there is a difference between Old Irish pronunciation and Modern Irish pronunciation. My Irish language pronunciation is Modern Irish, and even within Modern Irish, there is quite drastic differences within the dialects. So my dialect, my pronunciation would be primarily Connacht dialect, but with a smattering of Munster as well. I don't really have a lot of the Ulster pronunciation in there, which is quite different and is, is quite different from the other two. So there are differences between all three of those dialects, and there were other dialects that unfortunately have not survived into current modern usage. So that's just where I'm coming from. So the pronunciations that I'm giving are, again, my lived experience, how I speak Irish today. I am not fluent, so I may make mistakes, but I have been speaking it my whole life and quite actively speaking it my whole life. So when I say I'm not fluent, it's my vocabulary usually that lets me down. A little bit about the grammar, because nobody can figure out the Mo Quinniloch. Well, I'm sure people can figure out the Mo Quinniloch, but I cannot figure out the Mo Quinniloch. So we'll just leave that nightmare aside. So all of that being said, when you hear me pronounce a word, it will be in that Modern Irish dialect. And if you are learning Irish or using it in a modern pagan context, I do recommend that you don't try and learn Old Irish unless you're going in for translation, or you specifically want to learn it to read the lore. If you're looking for learning of Irish as an active spiritual practice, then please do learn Modern Irish, because you'll be able to converse in it. Nobody really speaks in Old Irish to each other anymore, and if you do that, you may not be understood. Plus, we don't have very, very definitive, or let's say provable, maybe, pronunciations for Old Irish. So the pronunciations of that are quite hotly debated, and it is a living language, and I feel that it's more respectful maybe to the deities as we go to contribute energetically to keeping Irish alive in the here and now, rather than obviously the English that we have all been conditioned into speaking in Ireland because colonialism, and we don't need to get into that either. So we will look at the second half of her name, which is Rian. And there is a slight roll on the or, so let's say that again. Rian. So I don't know if you're catching that. Rian. So when we put it, that is the Modern Irish for Queen, and I've given just the Old Irish spelling there as well. And generally, obviously, when you see Mórrígan written, it's M-O-R-R-I-G-A-N, and the R-I-G-A-N at the end of her name is that Old Irish version of Queen that's there. And there is also an alternative spelling from Modern Irish, or I-Father-O-G-H-A-I-N. So Rian is Queen. And when you put it together, we have, again, there's Great Queen, which is Mórrígan, Mórrígan. So Mór, this accent over the O lengthens the vowel, and the accent over the I lengthens that vowel. So you've got Mórrígan. And Phantom Queen then is Mórrígan, which is Morrigan. If you anglicize it, that's how we say it, Mórrigan, Mórrigan. So other names that she goes by or is known by, or the names of her sisters, and that's the big question. Is it the Morrigan herself, or is it separate individual entities? So again, there's pretty much a whole class in that, which I do teach. And again, resources at the end of the video. But for now, we'll just look at how the names are pronounced, introduce you to the names and how they are pronounced or could be pronounced. Now, some of these are in Old Irish, like that bottom one there. So I'm going to give my Modern Irish pronunciation of it as best I can. Okay, and again, there are multiple different ways to pronounce this. And if you hear another native speaker saying it a different way, they're not necessarily wrong, so please don't correct them. I'm not necessarily wrong, so please don't correct me. This is our modern living language, as I said, so I'm going to give you those pronunciations. So Mórrigu is another name for, it's another grammatical form of Mórrigan. So Mórrigu. And Macha, who is the Ulster sovereign goddess, Macha. And then we have Bive, and you will hear Bive's name pronounced Bav sometimes. For me, it's Bive. So the reason as well that I've put in the brackets there, we have Bove Jarrick, and Bove Jarrick is connected to Bive. There is a theory that they are the same character, gender swapped. So, but again, we will leave that for today. This is just an introduction video, and that is a whole other story. But I did want to include it because you will see Bove Jarrick as connected to Bive sometimes. So I just wanted to include the pronunciation of that. So Mórrigu, Macha, Bive. Other names of the Mórrigan, or possibly sisters, are Anon or Anu, who is connected to the Pops of Anu in County Kerry, which are two big booby mountains. We have Fair, and that one is interesting because in the FEA Old Irish, we don't have an accent on it. In the brackets there, I've given the modern Irish, which is Fair. I don't even know. Am I pronouncing that correctly? I don't even know. In modern Irish, it's not a very common term. It does mean fathom, as in like depth or a measurement, as far as I know. So fair. If you wanted to, you could look that up on folklore.ie. That is the Irish Language Dictionary online, and they do a handy little pronunciation guide there as well. So we also have Nevin, and again, you will hear that pronounced in the Old Irish, N-E-M-A-I-N. You'll hear that pronounced in multiple different ways. I go with Nevin because in the brackets there's actually N-E-I-M is the Old Irish and N-I-M-H is the modern Irish version, and they both mean poison or venom, I think, venom. And in modern Irish it would be Niv. So for me that is pronounced Nevin. And I did just want to throw in one of my personal bugbears, because this is a very common term for people who are working with Irish paganism or Irish spirituality, and very, very few people pronounce it correctly. And there is quite a standard pronunciation of this. And when you're working on your Irish pronunciation, really pay attention to where the emphasis is, because there's a particular rhythm to Irish, and you've probably noticed it's quite kind of sing-song, and our speech patterns go a particular way. So when we hear the emphasis placed in different places within a word or a phrase, it really jars. It really jars for an Irish ear. So tuatha de danan. Tuatha de danan. So the emphasis here is on the tuatha. Tuatha. And de is D-E fada. And the D is not a hard D, D, like in English. It's de. So it's more like a hard TH, de. Tuatha de danan. And the last two words kind of runs together when you're saying it. So you really want to put your emphasis on tuatha de danan. Now, obviously, you don't have to break it up. Keep practicing until you can say it more fluidly than that. It always sounds weird, even when I'm trying to slow it down for emphasis. But if I'm just reading that out, it's tuatha de danan. So tuatha is where the flow and the emphasis goes. So please practice that and try and get it right. And of course, the Morrigan is, well, maybe not of course, sorry if you don't know this already, but the Morrigan is one of the tuatha de danan. So Mórrígan she appears in many of their stories and tales in various forms in the mythological cycle. So let's look at some places associated with her. And these places are all in Connacht. There is a well-known book on the Morrigan which claims that there are no sacred or holy places in Connacht, which is the western province of Ireland, which are associated with the Mórrigan. And that's the biggest load of crap I ever heard, and makes me very mad every time I see somebody recommending that book, specifically because of this. And obviously I have a very personal connection to Mórrígan. So this is the place that I mentioned. Well, actually, this is the place that I mentioned, but we'll get to that in a second. So Mórrígan, actually, because there's a fada on the A. So Mórrígan in Irish means a mound, a stack, or a hill. So you will see there is also maybe hardening in modern Irish. There's associations because cruach is hard. So a toughening or a hardening, but I'm not sure if that generally when it's associated with the place, it is very much the mounds or the stacks or the hills. So a short stack really is what it means. And the reason that I'm mentioning that is because there is Rath Cruachan, which is Rathcroghan in County Roscommon. So even if you're saying the anglicized version, which is Rathcroghan, I don't want to hear any G's in there, okay? It's not Rathcrogan, it's Rathcroghan. And the GH is soft, and the same way the CH is soft in Rathcroghan. And that is the royal capital of Connacht, the western province of Ireland. And it is the sacred centre of the western region and is very, very, very important to, well, to a lot of things really, but specifically to Mórrígan. And this is the primary reason because her primary sacred site is Uav na Gach, which is the cave of the cats. So we have Uav, which is cave, and Uav na Gach. And you kind of have to say the G and the C with that, na Gach. And again, the T is kind of soft. It's more like a TCH almost, Gach. And that is the cave of the cats. And that is the fit abode of Mórrígan in the lore. And there's all sorts of other things associated to it and with it. And another primary place, and again, this is the reason that she gets named as a sex goddess, lots and lots and lots. There is the Old Irish quote from the text, which is Cahmach Tira, and it talks of the Dagda and the Mórrigan meeting before a major battle to their annual meeting at Samhain. And Samhain is Halloween. And again, you know, you can pronounce it Samhain, not Samhain. Thank you very much. So Samhain is when they meet. And that, of course, is the 31st of October or thereabouts. It's probably not on that exact date. But they had an annual meeting and an annual mating at the river. This was their designated spot. So in modern Irish, it's on Unshin, which is the Unshin River in County Sligo, and again in Connacht. So that Connacht is Connacht in the Old Irish. And again, just for the pronunciation of that, I'll say it again, Connacht. So now that grammatically that's changed because it's Connachtha, but without the A on the end there, it's Connacht, Connacht. Hope that makes sense. Now, just to quickly walk you through some resources, I have multiple blog posts on the Mórrigan, and they cover things like daily practice as a Mórrigan priestess, what's on my altar, some prophecy stuff, and various other bits and pieces, poetry, all sorts of stuff. So, and there's more being added there all the time. So do go and check that out. And I will link that directly in the notes below. Or you can go to my website and just click on blog, and you'll go through, and there's a little search bar there. You can just search for the Mórrígan altogether. I do have a class dependent on when you are listening to this. So for you early adopters who are watching this very quickly, we do have a class on this Sunday, the 27th of May, 2018 at 9 p.m. Irish time. So if you want to sign up, it's one of my monthly classes. So that link there on the screen will bring you to, if you are after that time, it will bring you to whichever the monthly class is running currently. So you can go and have a look at that. And that is an introduction to the Mórrígan. So I will go into everything that I've touched on here in a lot more detail. Obviously, those classes run for an hour and a half usually, and there is also a guided journey included with them. So you can go and meet the Mórrígan yourself with my native technique, journeying technique. And if you specifically want a Morrigan class with me, after that date, those classes will go into a download file, and there will be two different classes in there, which cover some of the same information, but in different ways. So you get two for the price of one. And it is generally working with the Mórrigan. So it is an introduction to the Mórrigan, and you can go to teaching on my website and you'll be able to see the classes to download, and they're available on demand. So books wise, there are a couple of books on the Mórrigan, and they have been out for many, many years, and I cannot in good faith recommend any books other than the two that I am recommending here. And that is not anything personal against any of the authors, but just that there's a lot of wrong information in them. There's a lot of no, I won't say careless. There's a lot of misunderstanding of the context for some of the information that they are portraying. And then there's some of them that are just downright bollocks. So the two that I'm about to recommend here, I highly recommend, and I can absolutely stand over them. I've read them cover to cover multiple times and know the authors personally, and can't recommend the scholarship highly enough, and also the personal practice of both of the authors, as much as I know about that. But the first one here on the screen is The Mórrigan Meeting the Great Queens. That is one of the pagan portal books from Moon Books, and the author is Morgan Daimler. And Morgan has written multiple books on various deities through the pagan portals. So it's a small little book. I'm just going to hold it up. If you have it on screen here, you'll see it is just a cover of the book, and it shows a crow in a woods and white text, which again just reads The Mórrigan Meeting the Great Queens, pagan portals, and Morgan Daimler's name on it. So I do recommend that book, and it's a really good intro as well. You know, this is an intro video. It's a nice, easy read. So, but you get really good quality information for what you're getting. And it's available in paperback or on Kindle. And that is not an affiliate link or anything like that, by the way. I really like these books, so I don't get anything. I'm not affiliated with the authors in any way, business-wise. I just really like their work, and I do work with them as often as I can, because I just like them. I like their work, and they're friends of mine as well. So the second recommendation is The Book of the Great Queens by Morpheus Ravenna, which is Concrescent Press, 2015. And of course, I don't have a copy of that to hand. Apologies for that. But it's a gorgeous artwork on the cover. It's a white, it's big, thick, heavy book. So something you can really get your teeth into, and a fantastic piece of work. And the artwork in there is by the very talented Valerie Heron, and can't recommend it highly enough. And as far as I know, Morpheus is running classes currently. So if you Google Morpheus Ravenna Banshee Arts, you will find, I'm sure you'll find links to classes that Morpheus runs, which are basically study classes for chapters of the book. And it's a really good idea because, as I said, it's quite a weighty book. So it's really good to have something you can kind of dig into in a community setting as well. So you're not on your own in any of this. So I just want to finish up and say Gur Magat. And as I said, you can go to my website, which is loraobrien.ie. That's LORAOBORIEN.ie. And there's a lot of resources up there. There's a lot of classes, there's a blog, there's various other bits and pieces. So go and have a look if you would like to. And I'm also on Patreon, so it's patreon.com/Lora O'Brien. So I'll put links to all this in the description below. So go and check it out if you want to learn more about the Mórrígan. So Gur Magat, and which means thank you, Oscailga in Irish, and Slán, which means goodbye. Slán go fóill. Bye for now.